more similar to talk about. So it's a good story. It's one of my favorites. Has anybody ever seen it staged? And then we'll spend some time explaining to you exactly what we're going to do. And it's called Keep It or Junk It. And so we're going to look at arguments today for your persuasive essay. Some of you have already written it. Yay, fantastic, good job. You get extra credit for being here today, and you get pizza. So if you've already written it, you're going to get extra credit in the portfolio category. And then hopefully, if you haven't written it yet, what we do today will help you to write that paper. Because argumentation is a difficult style. It's difficult to organize, you have to be logical, and so the hardest part really is building the logic and finding strong arguments. And that's what we're going to work on today. So it'll be really fun. I'm glad you guys came, and you will definitely get extra credit for coming today. So I'm going to turn it over to Miss Valerie and let her run our little. We're going to do a little icebreaker. I'm going to try and get it done in the next 5 minutes. You have been given a character. I'm going to give Miss Ghost the nurse. I'm going to be the mom to your family. And you can see in the corners, I have an A, B, C, D. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide you already as the family. We're going to have the Capulets over here, then the Montagues over here. The worrying fractions. And before you share your character, share something about yourself. Aw, you're lucky. I'm Mrs. Both, and I'm your nurse. I like your character. She's really funny. Okay, let's start. I'm Juliet. I teach electives, and my character is sorry about that. This is Juliet. Cover the hand. What did I say to be this time of head? Oh, happy dagger. This is thy sheep. Our activity today, we're taking blogs that I kind of went online. You know those sites that you guys go online to sometimes when you're looking for information? Yeah. I went on to a couple of blog sites where people were discussing this very question. Who's most at fault for the deaths of Romeo and Juliet? And I chose some better arguments, so I didn't really put really terrible arguments in there. All of them are pretty good, but we're still going to sift through them and find the best ones, the ones that we think are most logical. We're going to something non-logical, and that's what I'm interested in. That's what I want to see you guys work on today, because that's where you go with your writing next, right? That's where you come up with your claim, your counterclaim, and the evidence to support your claim. So the work, the lifting for your writing will happen today and here when you guys discuss whether or not those arguments are logical and what the best ones are, which ones are most convincing. Right? If it didn't have a good story, then it's probably not a good argument. And so it says right up there too, can you present text to support it? Because if you're going to say the nurse is at fault because, she tricked Juliet into marrying Romeo, that's not going to be a valid argument because it didn't happen that way. So you do have to know what happened in the play, right? So we're going to look for, is it a valid argument? And then the second point, is it strong? Is it credible? Does it convince you? A lot of things can be argued effectively from different points of view. So really, you're going to be looking at the language today, the credibility of the author, but also what's the strongest argument logically, right? So we're going to focus a lot on logic today. If A plus B equals C, that's the argument you're going to be looking for. Then D must be the next letter. That's my own logic. So I am not a fan of algebra. Sorry, Mr. Denny. Okay, so to get started, we are evaluate them for what you like, what you don't like, and you don't have to like any of them. That's fine too. But do be ready to defend.
should be discussing, starting with number 1, whether you want to keep it or junk it. And then what you guys finally decide, we're going to write it up on the board.
It's like your thesis. This is what I'm going to argue. Perfect. So then what would a counterclaim be? It's like your thesis. This is what I'm going to argue. Perfect. So then what would a counterclaim be?
It's like when you write your claim and you're like, but this could also happen, and then you give evidence why that didn't happen.
That is just about perfect, because when you're arguing something, there's always the other side, right? So if I'm going to say, hey, Romeo and Juliet are most at fault for their own deaths because they killed themselves after all, you could argue back, yeah, but Friar Lawrence is the one that married him. He should have never done that. It would have never happened. So those counterclaims are things where you argue in opposition to whatever the claim is. And by addressing the counterclaim, you actually build your own argument. Because if you don't address the counterclaim, what do people do when they read your paper? They sit there and go, yeah, but they don't believe you, right? So you build your credibility. You build your ethos. All right. That's the standard. Those are the standards that we're working toward. Just wanted to share those with you. Good job, you guys. You're on track. Let's keep going. This is just a discussion on what we're going to be doing today. That's deciding if the blogs are going to be logical and valid or not. And we're going to decide if the argument is strong. Okay, so in a moment, we're going to put you in those 2 groups. And I don't know if Ms. Valerie wants to keep you the way you are. Probably, right? Okay. These will be the groups that you guys will use. And we'll hand out the blogs for you guys to look at. Okay, but this is the activity we're working on. Question. How do you evaluate an argument? If we're going to read these blogs today, and they're on the table in front of you, if you want to check them out, how do you decide if it's a good argument or not?
This
is really an insight.
Blog number 3.
Romantic one for, I don't know, about 150 years worth of poetry writing. It's like, really serious, I'm going to stay. Or she's like, the brain part of it was a long passion. However, this entire story is just like,
So are you going to keep it or junk it? Okay, who would like to argue the perspectives that we're going to let Julian choose? Who gets to argue? Raise your hand if you want to argue your point on this one. 5 want to keep it, 3 want to junk it.
Romeo was 16, so he had higher influence over her, and since she was so young and it was her first love, she was just all for him. And she didn't want to listen to anybody else about that.
Teenagers and they're told what we want. So it was like, how do we know that this isn't just like a hormonal outburst between 2 teenagers? Because it lasted like 3 or 4 days. It's not just dragged on and on. And we like, they don't have enough brain. They don't have enough already come to the house because it's working. This is a reckless decision. Let's do it.
So that might be another argument in support of keeping it. So, as Fiona says, in the deaths of Romeo and Juliet, everyone is to blame. Go ahead and let's vote one more time. Do you want to keep that argument or junk it? Keep is your green, right? And thumbs down, pink, junk it. So we've got a couple of greens. We've got, what do you think, Alexander? Tell us why you would like to junk that argument.
Well, it does have good support, but I think it's too flawed because it says Romeo chose to poison himself, but it wasn't really out of his own will. It was only because he thought Juliet was dead, and there was nothing he could really do about that. They already loved each other so much, so there really was no option because there was no way for him to tell if she was really dead or not.
Oh, that's an excellent counterclaim.
Was so effective.
So perhaps we could
say. And that's
say.
part of Friar Lawrence's role in the story.
Absolutely.
That's
that is a good point.
And also, it says Romeo chose to kill Tybalt because Mercutio forced him to. Because the interference forced him to do that. And it says the nurse was also responsible because she could have told the Lord and Lady Capulet that Juliet had married Romeo, and Friar Lawrence could have told the Capulets that Juliet wasn't really dead. But that would have only incited the conflict even further.
Wow, fantastic.
That's the truth. And then because they prevented Romeo and Juliet from marrying,
yeah.
And if they would have found out that they did without their consent, they would get furious and feud with each other even more.
Very good arguments, you guys. Any counter arguments? Go ahead.
No, not a counter argument, but if Friar Lawrence had told them that he had Juliet and sort of false dead, then he would have been either burned at the stake for witchcraft.
Friar Lawrence would have been, that would have been the end of him. Did you have something to add, Fiona?
Interesting perspective.
You guys did a very excellent job of really working through all the layers of the different arguments. I think what you've discovered here is really what's true, that you can argue just about anything if you argue it well, logically, with credibility, with good language, with good examples.